Some movies grow old with us, and then there's one that can still take us back to a place where youth smells like gasoline, ozone, and belief in the impossible. To that moment when lightning splits the sky in half and a steel DeLorean cuts through the darkness like the hand of a stopwatch defying time itself. This video is a guide through the living memory of Back to the Future, not a museum or a fan scrapbook, but an honest chronicle of the people who once gave the world Marty McFly and Doc Brown, the first kiss at a school dance, and the music that made the clock tower tremble. We're winding the film reel back 40 years to see how their faces, voices, and destinies have changed by 2025. Who turned personal trials into a mission of hope, who found a second wind in art, who left too soon but left behind the light, and who still steps on stage and is recognized before uttering a word. No myths without facts, no sensations without proof, only timelines, testimonies, expert voices, and that same warm current of nostalgia that makes the lamps of the past flicker to life once more. We'll look at the cast, then and now, as travelers through time, where the machine is just a beautiful metaphor and the real journey is made by a human being, overcoming fear, forgetfulness, and the limits of their own time. Fasten your seatbelts. Ahead are 15 stories, each carrying the distant echo of lightning that once struck the clock tower, only to spark again in our hearts. Michael J. Fox, Marty McFly. He burst onto the screen like a jagged bolt of lightning striking the clock tower, fast, bold, with a spark in his eyes and a guitar that rang like a ticket to the future. His Marty wasn't a superhero, but an ordinary kid who suddenly realized that fate will take the wheel if you have the courage to press the gas harder than your fear. He brushed the dust off teenage dreams, turned the skateboard into a banner of stubborn freedom, and made us believe that rewriting the past isn't sacrilege. It's a chance to give yourself a better tomorrow than yesterday. The camera loved his ease. He entered a scene like he was stepping into a friend's living room, turning every line into a sparkling slalom where humor caught drama before it hit the heart too hard. Paired with Doc's eccentric wisdom, he became the human battery of the story, the one who charged the impossible with the pure energy of why not? And his yes sounded more convincing than any special effect. His then was youth that never asked permission to dream. It just put its foot on the pedal and let go of the brake to hear destiny shift gears. Years have left a fine web across his voice and step, but they couldn't dim the inner light that can warm even the largest hall. He turned personal trials into a beacon, not for applause, but for anyone who needs a point on the horizon to make it to morning. His public appearances grew quieter, as if the music dropped half a tone, but the melody only became stronger, revealing those frequencies heard not with the ears, but the heart. Today, it's as if he leads us back to the clock tower, without lightning or special effects, showing how to keep your balance when the road gets steep, and how to hold your dignity when the wind changes direction. His smile is the same, only now it carries more light collected through years of fighting. And when it flashes, the audience instantly recognizes the young man who once taught the world to take a step forward without looking away from the hands of the clock. He is a reminder of something simple and rare. Courage is not speed, but perseverance. And the real flight of the DeLorean happens inside a person, where every single day is another attempt to arrive at the place where someone is waiting. Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown. He stepped into the frame like a man already on friendly terms with the future, eyes like laboratory flasks, fizzing with mischief, words leaping ahead as though his thoughts ran faster than his tongue, white hair swirling like the trail of a meteor over a school stadium. His Doc Brown wasn't just an eccentric scientist. He was a romantic of formulas, turning risk into method, and the impossible into a warmly convincing invention, where every bolt had a name. Alongside Marty, he became the catalyst for growing up and daring greatly, the one who winked at fear and pulled the lever when the world whispered, "Don't," proving once and for all that time has a sense of humor, but only respects the decisive. His great idea played like music, loud, a little off-key, but so contagious that audiences left cinemas feeling they might know where the next hidden portal was. And beneath the comedy and explosions lay a quiet sadness, the understanding of what each experiment costs, where every jump into the unknown is measured not in jewels, but in heart bravery. His silver hair grew into not an age marker, but a frame for a living picture carried by audiences for decades. When he walks on stage, applause recognizes the tone even before the first "Great Scott," because his voice still carries the current of discovery. He has long become the keeper of the myth, yet he guards it without dust, with gentle self-irony, with the clear discipline of a stage veteran who knows that the truest spark is born where an artist believes in miracles, even when the mercury stubbornly drops. His movements are fewer now, his gestures sharper, his gaze warmer, and that makes Doc feel closer. Less fireworks, more human voltage traveling from stage to audience, not burning but warming. Meeting his film partners, he smiles the audience back to that clock tower where lightning once split the sky, and each time it's clear that the time machine is just a beautiful set piece, because the real journey is made by the actor, carrying the viewer through ages with one honest presence. He still teaches not formulas, but the courage to think one step further, and that one step, taken today, rings louder than any lightning rod. Leah Thompson, Lorraine Baines McFly. Her Lorraine entered movie history like a kitchen lamp glowing over a 1950s table, a warm light that made the fantastic believable and miracles feel like home, with the taste of apple pie and a teasing smile daring the rules just enough to let love begin. In her lived both porcelain tenderness and surprising courage, that moment when a girl chooses to dance before she doubts, nudging fate forward with one look. Because of her, the time machine gained a human heart, beating in rhythm with the high school dance. She moved between ages, from young Lorraine to her older self, showing how body language, voice, and a tiny pause could shift the air around her, as if someone had turned the time dial with a delicate click. Nothing about her felt false. Every note, from playful to fragile, rang so true that audiences recognized their own lives in the fantasy and believed that one evening, one choice, one kiss could truly turn the hands of destiny. Her maturity is a quiet authority, the grace of a storyteller who doesn't chase nostalgia but walks beside it. She's kept that same gentle light, only now she shines it on others, helping young voices find their confidence. Behind the actress, a director's instinct has emerged. In front of and behind the camera, she acts with precision and care, like a watchmaker restoring the perfect rhythm of the mechanism without ever showing the tricks. When she meets her old castmates, Leah smiles as if hearing the creak of the high school dance floor again, and the whole room seems to rewind in time, because no decade can erase that smile. Today, her presence isn't about loud statements but enduring tone. She enters quietly, yet holds the stage firmly, giving stories that essential human warmth, without which even the most ingenious time machine is only metal. And if, in youth, her heroine taught us to dream, then now Thompson herself seems to remind us of something simple. Age isn't a brake, it's a new gear, the one that keeps the story moving forward without losing rhythm or meaning. Thomas F. Wilson, Biff Tannen. His Biff hit the screen like a locomotive of teenage fear, broad shoulders, mocking squint, a fist that stamped every act of courage with its date. He wasn't a cartoon villain, but an uncomfortably familiar figure from real school hallways. In his performance, you could hear the rust of power, the heavy laugh, the pause before a punch, the habit of speaking louder than necessary. That's why every scene with Biff played like a stress test for Marty and George's courage. But Wilson's genius was in avoiding caricature. At key moments, he let us glimpse the emptiness behind the bravado. That fragile core roughness tries to hide. It turned conflict into a story of choice rather than a simple good versus evil. His physicality was a sharp geometry of threat, a step forward, a twist of the torso, a shadow stretching across the screen. And suddenly, the sci-fi fantasy felt more real than reality itself, because so many viewers had once stood under just such a shadow. Biff became the clearest mirror of the film's message. To change the future, sometimes you have to outplay your own fear. And Wilson gave that fear a memorably human face. Today, his tone is different. The warm self-irony of a man who's taken apart his legendary mask and rebuilt it into a gentle collection of jokes, sketches, music, and stories shared with fans. He carries Biff the way a gracious host might carry an old suitcase, carefully, with a smile, always ready to open it at a convention and pull out a few tales that make the crowd laugh and feel young again. As an artist and storyteller, he works with precision and calm. His brushstrokes and pauses on stage serve the same purpose, releasing the tension he once mastered so well on screen. When reunited with his castmates, he happily plays with his character's myth, parodying the growl, rewriting the lines, yet always leaves the audience a small gift, a reminder that power isn't in the shout, but in the control of it. His Biff today isn't a threat, but a cultural punctuation mark, an accent in the sentence of our nostalgia. You place it, and the line from the past suddenly sounds clearer, warmer, and full of meaning. And that's the quiet victory of time itself. A role once born of fear has become a reason for laughter and connection. And the actor, a guide leading us from the dark hallway of school memories into a bright hall where everyone earns their own applause. Crispin Glover, George McFly. His George was the poetry of awkwardness turned into courage, shoulders that seemed to apologize for their own height, a voice that first hesitated, then dared to take a step that changed the geometry of the whole scene. He played a man afraid to live inside his own day, yet who somehow found a fragile point of balance, accidental, funny, imperfect, and with that shaky support lifted the outcome of his entire life onto his shoulders. Each of Glover's movements felt like a careful edit in a rough draft, as if the character were erasing the old line, "I can't," and rewriting it as, "But what if I try?" That's why George's triumph at the school dance never looked like a celebration. It was the soft glow of a lamp being turned on, after which the world began to read him differently. In that quiet mix of trembling resolve and stillness lay the role's real power. The audience recognized in George that part of themselves that had waited years for the right moment, and finally got to live, without trumpets, without spectacle. Today, Glover is an independent voyager of art, walking a path that deliberately avoids the main road, and that, in itself, is his truth. He chooses routes where risk replaces publicity and oddity outshines the tired glitter of fame. His public voice has become measured, deliberate, as if he's still revising that same manuscript, only now it's his entire creative life on the page. When he meets the memory of George, he keeps a respectful distance. He doesn't exploit the image. He acknowledges it as a chapter that ended, one that made it worth turning toward unpredictability. His current roles and projects feel like letters with no return address. They reach those who can listen to the silence between lines, where the rarest note of truth lives. If the young Glover's George once taught us how to say yes through fear, the Glover of today teaches something else: to keep the right to be different, even in a world full of ready-made templates. That is his quiet victory over time, not chasing his own legend, but walking beyond it, accepting it as a precious but not final chapter. Claudia Wells, Jennifer Parker, Part 1. Her Jennifer entered film history like a brief but warm sunrise, appearing at just the right moment, saying only as much as needed for the hero's heart to find its footing, and leaving behind a lingering trace of hope. In her presence there was no noise, only certainty, a look that gathers up Marty's scattered doubts, and a smile that promises a safe shore when the storm of adventure raises waves higher than the clock tower. She performed without showiness, gestures economical, tone gentle, and that restraint made her real, an ordinary girl who becomes both the reason to return and the reason not to give up when fantasy demands something truly human at its core. In just a few scenes, Wells created an essential counterpoint. Wherever time winks ironically at the heroes, Jennifer brings gravity back to the story, reminding us that every flight needs a landing, otherwise victory feels incomplete. That quiet warmth makes her unforgettable, despite her brief screen time. The audience remembers the tone of her voice, turning a simple, "be careful," into, "I'll be waiting," in any time. Today, her voice carries calm gratitude, the sound of someone who knows that a short role can live a long life in people's hearts. She treats Jennifer's image with care, not nostalgia, recognizing its meaning, but never losing herself within it, keeping her rhythm steady and her distance from the noise. In rare public appearances, there's humor and warmth, the gentle return path by which stories find their way back to their creators, not as noise, but as light. Today, her presence is like a small lamp at the edge of a vast screen, quiet but steady, helping us see the human beneath the fantastic. That is her precision and her grace, a role played truthfully and without fanfare, which after decades still feels like a letter people keep rereading, not for the plot, but for the feeling that somewhere close, just a few steps away, is someone who still cares that the hero makes it home. Elizabeth Shue, Jennifer Parker, Parts 2-3. Her arrival felt like a soft change of tone, as if the orchestra quietly passed the solo to another violin. The melody remained familiar, but gained new depth and warmth. Shue brought to Jennifer a sense of composure and inner discipline, a quiet loyalty that asks for no fanfare, and that special attentiveness to her partner that keeps her scenes with Marty emotionally grounded even amid the wild tricks of time. In her performance, you could hear trust in the world of the story, in the stakes the heroes faced, and in the idea that even the unbelievable needs a human pulse. That's why her brief moments on screen worked like emotional anchors for the plot. She nurtured the love story gently, never decorating it too much. A precise gesture, a clear look, a timely pause. And suddenly, the fantasy landed back on Earth, reminding us what the heroes are really fighting for. That precision and inner glow stayed with the audience. The casting change didn't break the story, it evolved it, giving the saga a second breath. Today, her on-screen energy feels more distilled and assured. Experience has added weight to her words and meaning to her pauses. She holds the frame not with volume, but with a confidence born from years of discipline. When she revisits the image of Jennifer, Shue doesn't play into mirror nostalgia. She speaks to the past like to an old friend, respectfully, warmly, and without trying to rewrite what audiences remember. Her career took a broad arc, and that gave her voice the calm tone of a mentor. It no longer argues, it affirms. In the rare cast reunions and public talks, you still hear that same note of gentle realism. That fantasy only works when it has a home, and Jennifer remains the name of that home, simple, human, and real. Today, her presence is that bright point on the timescale your eyes naturally return to, a reminder that behind every great adventure lies one simple goal: to come home to those waiting by the door, no matter what year the calendar shows. James Tolkien, Principal Strickland. He entered the frame like a dry storm of discipline, chin set like a seal, eyes drawing a straight line through a pile of crooked excuses. His Strickland didn't need to shout. He was the rule itself, printed in bold on the school's front door. In just a few precise scenes, Tolkien built the embodiment of the system without turning it into caricature. Gestures measured, tone even, pauses deliberate, and suddenly the fantasy felt anchored in reality. Every adventure, after all, needs an adult metronome to keep time. He created pressure without hysteria, threat without theater. So every confrontation with Marty became a quiet duel, where the stakes were not just freedom, but the right to be imperfect. His presence served as contrast, the frame that made boldness visible. The stricter the rule, the louder the crack when it finally broke under the first truly brave act. Today, his tone carries a warmth no one would expect from a human metronome. Age softened the outline, but left the precision. He can still command a scene with a single glance. Meeting fans and co-stars, he shows how a cultural stereotype can evolve into a beloved emblem. One line, and the crowd smiles. Because that schoolroom strictness has become a shared password of nostalgia. His screen order now works in reverse. It doesn't press, it unites, like a conductor's baton that no longer frightens, but guides an orchestra into harmony. That's rare longevity for a typecast role, one built on restraint and respect for silence. It endures because it rests on simple truth, not theatrics. And when he walks down the hallway again, the audience hears not only the echo of discipline, but the gentle knock of time, admitting that even the strictest walls can become part of a home called our cinema. Frances Lee McCain, Stella Baines. Her Stella Baines became that warm brick holding up the house of the story. Maternal softness, unhurried gestures, and a gaze in which fantasy gains real breath. Human, simple, familiar. In just a few scenes, she builds a sense of home where miracles stop being frightening and start to make sense. A pie on the table, the rustle of a curtain, a voice that quietly says what words can't. Even when time spins out of control, family remains the compass that resets the needle north. Her performance is spare and precise, free of theatrical flourish, rich in those rare pauses that give even the wildest events a grounded weight. That's why Marty's meeting with his family in the past feels believable. Besides Stella, the world seems to smell of apples and clean laundry. And in that sense of real, there's a place to hide your heart. Over the years, her on-screen image has gathered a soft patina of nostalgia. Viewers remember not lines, but a feeling. That warm kitchen light where fantasy becomes cozy and close. In reunions and conversations about the film, her presence acts like a gentle prelude. She doesn't steal the spotlight, but sets a tone that makes you believe in people and their choices. Today, her role reads as a reminder of a quiet craft secret, that great adventures rest not only on lightning bolts and machines, but on believable hands setting a table. They give a story its sense of home. Her Stella isn't an effect, but a trust. Not a loud emotion, but a steady glow that keeps a frame warm for decades. And when memory takes us back to those scenes, we don't really hear the words. We feel the warmth they carried, which means the role worked perfectly. The fantasy became human, and time learned patience. Wendy Jo Sperber, Linda McFly. Her Linda was that bright spark in the family symphony, the quick, playful note that quietly keeps the whole story's mechanism running. A few sharp lines, a flicker of humor in her eyes, and an ordinary family moment suddenly glows with warmth, the kind of warmth that turns fantasy into something human. She played with ease and precision, never trying to steal the scene. And that made her the film's home chord, the grounding note that made Marty's coming-of-age melody more vivid. In every appearance, you could sense real life behind the adventure. Small, unfulfilled dreams, a touch of irony, fatigue, kindness. That mix that makes the audience recognize their own kitchen, their own hallway, their own family. Through that truth of presence, the big myth of the movie landed in reality. Next to Linda, miracles didn't look like script tricks. They felt like rare visits of luck to a home where good news had been waiting too long. The memory of Sperber lives on like the glow of a nightlight. You don't recall her scenes line by line, but by the feeling that someone left a light on to help you find your way back. In the shared memory of cinema, her Linda reminds us of the quiet strength of supporting voices, those second parts that never demand center stage, but without which the harmony falls apart. Her role taught a simple truth about lasting impact. It's not only the loud and spectacular that remain in great stories, but the quiet, faithful, homely things, the ones that welcome the hero back from the storm and bring them home again. That's the power of her presence today, a gentle, good-hearted support that makes us believe that even the wildest journeys through time have a final stop, the family table, where someone is already laughing, no matter how hard the day has been. Mark McClure, Dave McFly. His Dave was the quiet anchor in the family geometry, an unnoticeable but vital point from which the line of Marty's coming of age straightens and the scale of change in the renewed present becomes clear. McClure played with delicate restraint, a couple of tones, a half pause, a modest smile, and suddenly the world around the heroes feels more believable, touched by the ordinary rhythm of life where success is measured not by fanfares but by the calm of everyday normalcy. His presence worked like a fine calibration of the family portrait. Through Dave, you could see how subtle shifts in the past created visible differences in the present, a different walk, new habits, fresh plans for the evening. That was the quiet strength of his role. Without loud gestures, he proved the story's main idea, that small, well-timed acts can rebuild entire lives until their new outlines are instantly recognizable. Today, his screen tone carries the mark of reliability, the kind of actor who doesn't need the center of the frame, but gives the frame balance just by hitting the right note. Cast reunions, fan meetings, and rare cameos have turned Dave into a comforting sign of normalcy, something you want to return to after the storm of time travel. There's a home, a job, a plan for the morning, and in that, you find the real reward of all those journeys through time. McClure carries his share of the myth with composure and quiet dignity, like someone carefully turning album pages, not rushing, not forcing, letting memory pick the picture it needs. That honesty toward simplicity made his contribution enduring. Amid time machines and paradoxes, it's roles like his that keep the story grounded, reminding us what it was all for in the first place, the human everyday, which remains the true prize of time. When lightning split the sky above the clock tower, it seemed like a story about defeating time itself, but years later, it became clear. It was a story about overcoming fear. You can't rewind time as easily as film, but you can reclaim courage. The same courage that lit up Marty's eyes, straightened George's shoulders, taught Doc to love more than his formulas, and gave Lorraine the right to choose her own path. We've followed 15 faces, once blank pages in the same notebook, now full volumes with folds on their most important paragraphs. They never stayed in the 80s. Some turned pain into hope, some made laughter their craft, and some chose silence over fanfare. Together, they form one honest chord, the sound of growing up. The time machine turned out to be just a beautiful prop. The real journeys happen inside us, between I can't and I'll try, between I'm alone and we're together, between then and now. The trilogy taught us something simple. You can't fix the past, but you can understand it. You can't predict the future, but you can be ready for it. And the present, it's the moment when you finally say, Yes. Where it once took lightning, now a smile, an outstretched hand, a few honest words are enough. Maybe that's why we keep coming back to these scenes, not for the stunts, but for the feeling of home, for the kitchen light that stays on until you return. And if one day you find yourself walking down a dark street, may that familiar light switch on in your memory, the laughter of friends, the hum of tires on asphalt, the twin fire trails fading into the night, a sign that true speed isn't in the needle of a speedometer, but in the resolve of a heart. And when the clock hands meet again at 12, we'll understand. Back to the Future was never about escaping the present. It was about arriving in it, on time. Everything else, the music, the skateboard, the lightning, the clock, they're details. The real story is about people who once chose to be brave, and that story continues every time someone, like Marty, takes a step forward, like Doc, laughs into the unknown, like Lorraine, believes in love, and like George, finally tells the world, yes.